All right. Yeah, what do we do without internet, right?
Oh, it's scary. I was like, oh, what do I do now? you
The
know.
whole world shuts down. It reminds me of, I don't know if you ever watched Saturday Night Live, and this is an old episode where it was Will Ferrell and I forget, was it Tina Fey maybe? They were news anchors, and the teleprompter went down, and all of a sudden it flashed to like a scene from Lord of the Flies, or yeah, Lord of the Flies, where they eat each other, and it's pretty extreme. And she's like, at one point they're like, bring back the words, because they didn't know what to
I know.
tell.
I remember that one. That was a good one.
It's kind of how I feel when the internet goes out, right? It's bring back the words. What do we do? Today's class is going to be focusing in on what are the money making activities. And so when we think about real estate, it's easy to be at home, right? And I was even kind of thinking about what I wore today. I have my little Remax shirt on. If I was going to the office, I probably wouldn't wear this, right? I would be a little bit more dressed up. But since y'all can only see really my head, right? I have jeans on. I'm very casual at home, right? Versus going out into the workplace. I would dress differently if I was meeting you at the office, right? And so this last 9 months, we've sort of slipped into a different role, right? And being at home. And so that the unfortunate part of that is that, when we do that, it affects our business, right? Because when we're at home, when we're not making money, we're not focusing on the money making activities. And in real estate, Debbie, you can attest to this as long as you've been in it. We can get sidetracked with things that we feel like, one, have to be done by us, right? And that they are priority. And oftentimes they're not.
Definitely.
So just having good discipline. And, when Debbie and I started selling real estate, we didn't have these things, right? We did not have cell phones.
Nope.
So I literally had, if I wanted to search the MLS, I had to go to the office. The MLS was a big giant binder that sat on the front desk that somebody updated, and there was only one board, right? And so that was the MLS, right? You literally had to go page by page to search for homes, okay? And now these are wonderful, right? A little blessing and a curse, because what do a lot of us use? We use our phones for our alarm clocks, right? So the first thing in the morning, we wake up to turn the alarm clock off, and all of a sudden we have these notifications on here, and we're like, ooh, I better answer these, right? And a lot of times we'll start our day reactive. And now that we don't have to go anywhere and we're at home, we might just sit in our pajamas all day long and think that we're working, right? And so today we're going to focus in on what are the money making activities, and then how much time should we be spending on things like that, and then how do we delegate? And I know when we're new, that's hard to think about delegating, because I have all this time on my hands, right? And so, but having a good base, right, and creating good habits. And 3 of you are brand new to the industry, right? So creating good habits from the get, right, is super important. So I did email you the materials. You can open that up and follow along if you want to. But otherwise, I'm just going to go off the PowerPoint here. So one of my favorite books is, let me grab it. It's The Greatest Salesman in the World. This is an amazing book for you guys new, The Greatest Salesman in the World. It's an easy read. You could read it in a day, in a couple hours. But the concept is there are 10 scrolls. And so each scroll is a principle that, if you were to be the greatest salesman in the world, would become a part of your DNA. And so the goal isn't that you just read the book, right? You read it and then you study each scroll for 30 days. And so we've done masterminds around this book, and it's quite amazing the things that come out of it. But one of my favorite lines or parts of this book is what I have on the screen, is that in truth, the only difference between those who have failed and those who have succeeded lies in the difference of their habits. And so today, that's really what we're going to be talking about, or what are good habits that we can create around vital activities that we know bring in revenue, right? So good habits are the key to all success. Bad habits unlock the door to failure. So the first law that I'll obey is that I will create good habits and become their slave. And so really, like I said, that's what we're talking about today. So I would encourage all of you guys, get it on Audible if you want. Mine is very beat up, as you can see, because I refer to it. It's highlighted. It's dog-eared. We do the Workman classes. That book is a part of the principles that we teach. In fact, Workman's core values are the 10 scrolls. And so definitely good stuff there, and a good read for salespeople. Okay. So another great slide here. So in Africa, every day the gazelle wakes up and it knows it has to be faster than the lion or it will be eaten. And every morning the lion wakes up and it knows it has to outrun the slowest gazelle or it will starve to death. And so the question is, are you a gazelle or are you a lion? So in either way, in the morning, we got to get up and be running, right? We've got to be taking action. I haven't seen it personally the posts, but Danielle Martinez shared a post that was put out that showed our agents and our production compared to the competition over the last 9 months that we've been in the pandemic. And it's pretty remarkable, the activity that our agents are doing, because they get up and they work, right? They get up, they don't, you know, I have coaching clients, you guys, that are, some of them are having an amazing year. A lot of them are having an amazing year. And then I have some that are, you know, barely getting by. And so, you know, it all comes down to attitude, right? What's in our mind? What do we believe is true, right? And what can be true for us? And so when we get up, I personally want to be a lion, because the lion's a badass, right? Not that gazelles aren't cool, but I want to be the king of the jungle, right? I want to be the lion. So what does that look like in our day-to-day stuff? So reaching your potential, another great quote here is that people assume everyone wants to reach their potential and be the best that they can be. I've concluded that most only want to be average and just enough, do just enough to get by. Y'all know who Nick Saban is, right? He's 6-time champion college football coach, right? He's pretty hardcore. Is the Alabama State college football coach. So what does that really mean, right? So we look at someone, we assume that they want to live up to their potential, right? And most of us are only tapping into about 25% of our potential. So just let that soak in for a second. 25%, Tommy, of your overall potential, right? And so I say that because I want that to kind of get under your skin a little bit and think, what can I do to be better, right? What can I do every day to be better at my skill or be better at my craft, right? And so if we just, nobody wants to be average, right? At least I don't want to be average. And so, and you guys showed up to this class, so that tells me you don't want to be average either. And so really think about that. What are you doing every day to stretch and grow and live up to your potential? So are you getting the most out of the hours that you're working? That's a tough one, right? Because we think we're busy, but are we busy doing money-making activities? And so there's a couple things, you know, money-making. So your MMAs, right? Money-making activities, and then your activities most enjoyed. And so activities most enjoyed are the parts of this job that make us happy, right? And so, you might enjoy doing the comps, right? You may not. You know, I, you know, if someone else could do comps for me, I might be okay with that, right? And so, really thinking about what are the things that you enjoy that bring you joy in this industry, and then are they money-making activities? Because if they're not money-making activities, then we should be delegating those to somebody else. Okay, so are you getting the most out of the hours that you're working? Are you consistently operating at your highest and best use? And so what is the highest and best use? When we get into the materials, there's two things. Number one is lead gen. Number two is lead conversion. So am I generating leads? And then when I do generate them, am I able to convert them? Right? Am I able to create a relationship? That's your highest and best use as a salesperson, right? And then underneath that, we have negotiating and marketing and other things. But the two most vital things that you guys do, or that all of us do, is that our highest and best use is that we are generating leads and converting them. And then do you know, which I just told you, what your highest and best use of your time is prospecting, right? Whether that's sitting in open house or calling your top 50, doing a marketing piece, you know, your highest and best use is creating opportunities where you can engage in a meaningful conversation about buying or selling real estate. All right, so let's get clear. So regardless, so you want to think about it this, and I love this slide, right? So a 16-ounce glass of water, y'all can picture that in your mind. There's only so much space in that cup, right? You can't put 17 ounces in it because it's going to overflow. And so when we think about our time, right? When my father-in-law passed away a couple years ago, and he lived a very full life, right? He was actually called the most interesting man in the world, kind of cloning off of the beer guy. So he had a very full life, right? He traveled the world. He, you know, had different jobs. He experienced a lot of things, had a very cool life. And at the end of his time, the one thing he said is, I wished I had more time. And so that is our only resource that is truly limited. Everything else isn't, right? So think about that. You know, that's pretty important. So if you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And so if I say yes to blowing off my prospecting time, that's okay for today, but it will affect your business in 45 to 60 days from now. And so everything we do today, you know, I know you guys have heard me say that. So what are we putting into that cup? Are we getting 16 ounces out of it? Okay, so we want to make sure. And that is actually a book. I think it's called, If It's Not a Hell Yes, Then It's a No. So that's actually a good read. So, all right, so money is not the key asset in life, time is, right? So again, the only resource that truly is limited. So your time should be revered as the most precious resource that we have. So inefficient behavior always takes more time. One of my things my mom used to say to me is that if you half-ass things, it takes more time than if you just did it right the first time. Right? Think about it. If you do something, you got to go back and do it again, then you actually spent more time on it than if you would have just done it right the first time, right? So inefficient behavior always takes more time. While many agents willingly dedicate 10 hours per day to their career, most would benefit from 6 because they waste 40% of their day. So you'd be better off if you were just deliberate for 6 hours a day than if you were to spend 10 and waste the other part of it. Plus, I don't know about you, but it's exhausting, wasting time and being inefficient, right? And for me, it's also frustrating because when I know I'm being inefficient, I know I'm wasting time, and it's just irritating to me, right? So I would much rather put 6 awesome hours in and be able to look at myself in the mirror at the end of the day and say, wow, you rocked it today, right? Than spend 10 hours away from my family and wonder what the heck I got done for the day. All right, so spending time on irrelevant activities has a devastating effect. I really want you guys to think about this slide. I'm trying to get back to my materials here. If you look at this, 1 hour could equate to $2.4 million over the course of a career. And how is that? So 5 days a week, 48 weeks, that's 248 hours in the year. If you just spent 1 hour, right, that got wasted. And if you were to spend that time prospecting, it could have been 240, hours times 30 dials is 7,200 connections, right? And then we take it down to transactions, could be an additional 48 transactions, right? At an average GCI, which we know our gross commission is much higher than $5,000. That's $240,000 per year, right? And then times that by 10 years at 10%, 2.4. Right? That's a significant amount of money just from spending 1 hour. And I know I'm guilty of it, right? I waste an hour a day at least on Facebook or on some, I don't know what others, maybe Jessica's on TikTok or Instagram or wherever, right? And I'm not saying don't do those things because, sometimes that's just decompression time, right? Sometimes I'm prospecting when I'm on social media, but just really, you want to think about your time and really challenge every minute that you're spending, and can it be delegated or can I do it more efficiently? One of my favorite authors and speakers is a guy named John Assaraf. And it was about, I don't know, 2 years ago, he did a Facebook Live, and he was talking about time. And he was looking at his life and trying to figure out how he could get more time and where could he improve. And so one of the things that he realized is that every other week he was getting his hair cut. And this guy lives in LA. And if you've ever been in California anywhere, the traffic is horrible. So he was spending an hour to drive to his barber to get his hair cut. So 2 hours, right, there and back, and then 30 minutes getting his hair cut. So he reached out to the guy who did his hair and asked him if he would be willing to come to his office and he would pay him more. And so now the barber comes to his office and he has just increased 2 hours every other week in his schedule by asking. Now it costs a little bit more, but what the cost for his hourly rate, what he makes per hour, far exceeds what he was paying the barber and the additional cost. And so really challenge those things in your life and look at where can I be more efficient, because 1 hour could equal $2.4 million. All right, so choosing a career path. So your path determines your potential. So think of it this way. We've got typical salespeople, right? Which nobody who works at Remax Professionals is typical because we're all above average. And so we have choices, right? At the end of the day, we all have free will. And so do we want to be a typical entrepreneur, right? Or do we want to be thriving? And the goal here for us is that we want you to be thriving entrepreneurs. I know when we quit our day jobs, right? Our real jobs, we think, wow, no one's ever going to tell me what to do again, right? And Jessica, I don't know what you did before you got into real estate. And Daniel, I know you've been self-employed and a business owner, and Tommy, you as well. So it doesn't quite apply to the majority of us in here. And I've been a self-employed person since I was 21 years old. So my entire adult life, right? I don't even know what that's like to have someone pay me, right? So a thriving entrepreneur, right, thinks about what they're doing as a sellable good. So what are you creating something that when you decide to do something else or you decide to retire, does it have value? Does it have value that someone would want to pick it up and say, hey, I'm going to buy this from Tommy, right? So we want to think about that. And entrepreneurs also think about leverage, right? They leverage other opportunities, they leverage people, they leverage money, right? So thinking about that, and then the entrepreneur spirit. And I would guess all of us on this call are entrepreneurs because, like I said, we've all pretty much been self-employed our whole lives. And Jessica, like I said, I don't know what you did before, but you're here now. So you're in the entrepreneur group. So there's no going back. So in the materials, this is going to be on page 9, if you're following along in the materials. So, and I love the quote at the top there, success is a journey, not a destination, right? So it takes time and it takes effort, right? So the first thing is that you've got, there are 3 1/3 components. And so when we look at the materials, we actually start at the bottom of the materials. So we want to commit, right? That's the first thing. Is you got to commit. You got to be all in no matter what, right? If the shit hits the fan tomorrow, you got to be all in, right? And be committed to it, okay? Confidence, right? Difference between confidence and cocky, right? Be consistent. That's another challenge that realtors have, is that they get, we get into January and everybody takes their foot off the gas in December, right? Which, again, everything you do today affects your business in 45 to 60 days. So don't take your foot off the gas. Dive in, make your calls, get connected with people. So people start prospecting in January, right? They get busy and now they got a bunch of stuff in escrow by March. They stop prospecting because they're too busy trying to close the deals. And then May comes and they go, oh crap, I don't have any more leads. I better prospect again. And so you see this cycle. And so that's where consistency is key, right? Every single day prospecting, every single day letting people know what you're doing, okay? So then that creates our beliefs, right? And of course, coming to these classes helps to create that foundation for you. Endurance, right? Debbie, you can speak to this. You got to have some endurance in real estate, right? You got to wait. You got to put the time in to make it start to churn. And then being effective and efficient, that's really what this class is about, right? And then mastering the systems. One of my favorite quotes is Bruce Lee said, he did not fear a man who knew 10,000 kicks. He feared the man who had practiced one kick 10,000 times. And so practicing our scripts, refining our processes, making sure that everything is at its peak performance. We get comfortable and complacent if you do this long enough. And sometimes we need to mix things up and make them better. Okay. The next part of this is patience. Patience is a virtue, right? We got to have patience. Promotion and proficiency. Okay, again, tooting our own horn and being proficient. And then when we start to move beyond that, you start developing people around you. If you want to have a team, or even people, you join masterminds, right? You have people around you that you want to help, develop and build up. And then lastly, it's leverage, right? So leveraging, again, other opportunities, people, even if you don't aspire to have a team, you still have a team, right? Because you've got a lender, you have a title company, you have your warranty people, your home inspectors. So you still have people around you who support you and help your business, right? So that's still creating that leverage. All right, so 10 steps to being fully leveraged. So this is on page 10 of the materials. So step 1 is analyze, right? Oh, hold on, let me go back. So analyzing your operational model, okay? So do we have the resources and the strategies in place, okay? Number 2 is record all your current activities. And in the materials, it suggests doing this for 2 weeks, where you account for every minute that you spend every day. That sounds like really hard, doesn't it? It's kind of like if you've ever been on a diet, what's the one thing they tell you to do? Keep a food journal, right? Because you got to keep track of everything that you're eating and drinking, which is not always a fun thing to do, right? Because it's a high level of accountability and honesty. But if you want the results from the diet, you record what you eat and drink, right? So what's the point of that though? It's really designed to help you challenge, not only being aware of where you're spending your time, but challenging that behavior, right? And is this a money-making activity? We used to tell this, well, one of Nate's mentor, Howard Brenton, who rest in peace, has been gone for a few years now. He used to tell this story about a guy that takes a pig to a bar. And I'm not doing the story justice. You'd have to see Nate do it because he is very animated with it. But anyway, let me get to it. So guy takes a pig into a bar, and the bartender says, hey, you can't have a pig in here. And the guy tells the bartender, hey, but this is no ordinary pig. He does tricks. So the bartender's like, all right, I'll humor you. So gives the pig some commands, and the pig does his tricks. And the bartender goes, wow, that's pretty impressive. But how long did it take you to teach that pig how to do those tricks? And the guy said, well, who cares? What's time to a pig? So you get the moral of the story, right? Is he spent he wasted his time teaching a pig something irrelevant, right? And so challenge yourself in your behavior. Step 3 is distinguishing between vital and irrelevant, right? What is vital? What is a money-making thing that has to happen, right? And then what's irrelevant? You putting up a sign, it's a vital activity, needs to happen, but does it need to happen by you? No, it doesn't, right? That can be outsourced. Okay. There's a lot of things that we do that we hang on to, right? Nate will tell you that when he first got in the business, he made his own signposts, right? And then he paid a buddy to borrow his truck so he could run around and put up signs himself, right? Because he felt like he was the only one that could do it. He soon learned that paying the $30 to have a sign put up was well worth the money, right? So challenge that, okay? Step 4 is creating 2 progressive vital activities only checklists, which you guys are going to get in the class materials. We have that for you. And then steps 5 through 10 are mandatory only if you want to have a team, which I don't necessarily agree with, because step 5 is establishing a step-by-step instructional procedure for each activity on the checklist. And I feel like there are some things in the checklist that even as a solo agent, you should have a procedure around, just because it makes you better at your job. It makes sure that things don't fall through the cracks, and it helps with risk management. So I think that if you do something more than 3 times in your business, it should have a checklist. Okay. Step 6 is the organizational chart of the desired positions. We are going to be hosting the team advance or the team summit class in January. So if any of you do aspire to have a team at some point, that's a great class, and we give you all of the different positions that could be on a team. 7 is assign the duties for each position, and then 8 is finding and attracting talent. 9 is using the procedure manuals to train and to hire, and then 10 is holding the talent accountable to appropriate performance standards. And I personally think you could be doing number 10 even with your ancillary arms of your title company, your mortgage company, because if you've got deals in escrow, you want to know what updates are, right? And you want to make sure that the title company and the lender are playing nice together in the sandbox, right? And that we have a rapport, because at the end of the day, the client's not going to remember how crappy the title company was. They're going to remember that you were the one that referred them to the title company. And so I think step 10 could still be done even as a solo agent. Okay. All right. All right, so 5 tools of intent. And, I love the word intent because there's just so much meat behind the word intent, right? If I intend to do something, that sounds a lot, like there's a lot more behind that, right? Energy and push than if I say I'm going to try to do something, right? Because if I'm saying I'm trying, the word try is an excuse in advance. So I really love the word intent. So being intentional. So thriving businesses result from knowing the answers of 5 most important questions. So the entrepreneur's mantra, what is that? That is, it's unacceptable for me to earn less than, and you fill in the blank, whatever your income goal is. That's your entrepreneur's mantra. So this is your why, right? Your rally cry, right? Why do I want to make that kind of money? Okay. Your economical model identifies what must be done. Okay. How many houses do I need to sell in order to make $100,000? Your operational model then identifies how. Okay. So I want to make $100,000. That's 15 sales. I'm going to get X number of sales from doing open houses, and an X number of sales from, social media, from open houses. So it's identifying the how. Okay. What are you going to do in your business to create that type of contacts in order to get to $100,000 in GCI? The organizational model identifies who will get it done, right? And most of us, if we're solo agents, that's us, right? So I would encourage you to use the transaction coordinators that are inside the company. They are all amazing. They have years and years of experience. They know the tools, they know the systems. They will make sure that you don't get in trouble and that you get paid on time. And so for the price that they charge, it is well worth it. So I would encourage all of you guys to either chat with what do we got? We got three, right? There's Janan, Stephanie, and Janice. So I would, give any of them a call and chat with them. Like I said, the price that they charge is well worth it. And if you're new and you're saying, hey, I want to learn the process myself, that's okay. They'll still show you, right? They'll still work with you on that and make sure you understand. But honestly, I wouldn't know how to put a form into SkySlope, or what do we use? Is it SkySlope? I don't even know. That's how much I don't know, right? I think it's SkySlope. Yeah, Daniel's telling me it is. That's how much I don't know, because I pay a TC to do it, right? I would not know how to put a form in there. And that's probably bad on my part to admit that, but it's not the highest and best use of my time. So I paid the TC to do it. Okay. The activities management system. So this identifies when it will be done. And so we've got different checklists and things. And again, that's where the TC comes into play, because they help with making sure that our timelines are done. Okay. And those timelines are important. All right. So time, right? So the time for your time. So all of your time should be blocked into 4 categories. I actually, I think it was last year, I saw somebody doing a webinar on Facebook on how to time block. And I thought, oh man, how clever. Somebody's making money on teaching people how to do time blocking, right? Which, we've been doing time blocking since the beginning of time, right? In real estate. We live off of our calendars, right? That's what we do. And so time blocking is the new sexy word. When I first got into real estate, it was time management, right? You had to manage time. But what we've realized is time management's an oxymoron. You cannot manage time. There's only 24 hours in the day. What you can manage is how you choose to behave in those 24 hours, right? So the four categories, I already introduced you guys to the top 2, right? Lead gen, lead conversion. So lead gen, prospecting. It's not talking to your best friend driving to the office, right? Prospecting is defined as looking for new business, okay? Marketing, sending something out, posting something. Our company's been pushing out some really awesome content. So you guys have that is yours to share, okay? So you're on the inner circle, you're on the Remax professionals page, share the mortgage update, share the content, the Maricopa County stats that Nate pushes out, share all of that. That is the first step in letting people know about what's going on in real estate, right? Is sharing relevant data. Now don't be boring with that and only share that. You want to have some fun with it too. But those are good places to start. And what I love about the stuff that Orlando's producing for us is, and we're stepping up our game with content for you guys. So there's some really good stuff out there that you can share. Okay. Remaxhustle.com. I would encourage you to bookmark that. You can go in and grab all of the current TV commercials that are out that are Remax commercials. Have you seen the house for sale with the 2 little people standing in front of their house? You can brand that, Daniel, to you and push that out to your social media stuff. You can also create little graphics and stuff in there. There's even one about COVID. So there's really good content. So make sure you guys are going to remaxhustle.com and bookmark that and create some content. And the cool thing about those commercials, you can click the all button and download all of them. I think there's like 12 or 14. So you can download all of them within one button. And then that way you're not having to go back and create it every time you need new content. It's just there. I have a folder saved on my desktop and I just go in and grab it every week that I want to push one of those out. So lead conversion, right? Those are your face-to-face, right? Zoom to Zoom, belly to belly with people, right? Open houses, all of that stuff. Client care. So this is after we get the person, right? So they write the contract. Now we get them to closing. Okay. And then personal development is taking classes like this. It's going to the masterminds. It's improving your skill. It's scripting. It's dialogues, all those things that help you become a better version of the realtor that you are today. Okay. So only these 4 categories are truly money-making activities. Right? Anything outside of that should be delegated, right? Or not done at all if it's not a money-making activity. All right. Let's see, where are we at here? Okay, so page 13. So your AMS, right? Your activities management system. So being intentional and proactive, right? Proactive again means to produce action. And so we need to not only challenge, but be really clear about where we're spending our time. So the first thing here is define the total hours of the week. So your time budget, right? And in the beginning, you got to put in the 40 hours, 50 hours a week, right? I mean, it is what it is to get it built up. Daniel, I mean, I can't imagine being a DJ, how much hustle you had to have in that. That's going to be a lot of hustle to get people to book you, in different venues and stuff. So I'm sure you're not unfamiliar with hard work.
Actually, probably 66% of that career is building the calendar and getting deposits. The fun part is that 5-hour event. That was the fun part. And I mean, and I don't mind going out there and hustling, but you're right. We all love to be in front of customers, but if you don't have a pipeline of possible customers, we don't have customers.
Yep, absolutely. I love that. If you don't have a pipeline, then you don't have customers. So I might have to borrow that from you as one of my new favorite things to say, because it's true, right? You don't want to get out of bed every morning and wonder who needs your services. So define the total career hours in the day. Define your vital blocks, right? So looking at your calendar, and this is what it is referred to as my perfect week. I like to call it my intentional week, because again, I like the word intentional much better. And the word perfect is a big stumbling block for a lot of people, because if you are a perfectionist, you know that there is nothing that is ever perfect, right? So calling it my perfect week creates some impediments for people. So I like to call it intentional. So when I look at my intentional day, right, if I'm going to start my day at 9 o'clock in the morning and I'm going to be done by 6, what are the things I'm doing in there? And as new agents, you guys should be prospecting a minimum. Well, all agents should be prospecting a minimum of 1 hour a day. If you're new, I'd like to see you doing 3 hours a day. 3 hours a day, right? And so, and if, that could be a combination of calls, could be, open houses, it's just wherever you are going that you're intentional, and wear your swag. I gotta shut my door. One of my dogs opened it. Sorry. Wear your swag. I was talking to Kyle Clayton the other day, and he told me he was in a park and a 3 or 4-year-old kid saw his Remax balloon on his shirt and said, "Hey, you sell real estate." A 4-year-old, right? And so the power is huge. And so wear your swag, right? I got mine on here. Let people know who you are, because that balloon attracts attention, right? And people recognize it. So definitely use that and use yourself as a moving target, if you will. A moving billboard. That's a better way to say that, not target. So identify in your day, when are you going to prospect? When are you going to create the content that you're going to push out, right? And so getting very clear about that, and then record the activities, right? Stay engaged for the entire block. Again, cell phones, those can be distracting, right? So stay engaged. And one little thing that I want to share about time blocking is that, it's been proven, and it's in Brandon Burchard's book, is it Highly Effective Habits or something like that? Anyway, he talks about that it's been scientifically proven that the adult mind cannot focus on something for longer than 50 minutes. And so, time block in 50-minute increments. And then it's recommended that you get up and move your body. Stretch, go for a quick little walk, get a drink of water. If you're a high I personality and you've sat for 50 minutes, watch a funny cat video, do something that's a reward for having committed to that, right? And it is scientifically proven that if you get up and move your body, it will revitalize you and give you a boost of energy. And so when we talk about time blocking, look at a 45-minute, 50-minute with a 10-minute break, okay? So stay engaged, and then refer to your vital checklist, which we're going to go over, and then assess, right? At the end of the day, reflect, went right, what I like to change. So what do I need to revise or improve? And then let it go. Play the Frozen song, let it go, because tomorrow is a new day, right? We reset tomorrow. And if you end your prospecting time on a bad note, or you don't feel good about it, what's likely to happen tomorrow? Could blow it off, right? Because I don't feel good about it. So always, always, always end your prospecting time on a high note, even if that's just leaving a voicemail for someone. Because if you end it on someone telling you realtors suck, the next time prospecting comes up in your schedule the next day, you're not going to feel warm and fuzzy about doing it. Okay. And one of the things that Og Mandino says in this book is that for every no gets me that much closer to the yes. And so one of Nate's buyer's agents, when he took these classes with me last year, he said, "I eat rejection for breakfast." And so I love that, right? Because for every no gets me that much closer to the yes, right? And you have to get enough no's in order to get to the yes, right? It's a law of averages. And then step 8 is repeat, right? Rinse and repeat every single day, okay? Let me just look at my notes here to make sure I'm not missing anything. I'm good. All right. So here's a really basic time blocking intentional week that you guys can mirror if you want to, or you can create your own. I will tell you one good tip about doing these types of calendars. You can have it on paper and put it where you can see it, right, in your day timers or wherever on your desk. But the biggest change that, when you talk to Nate about this, the perfect week has been around for a long time. This is not a new concept, but he's really only embraced it probably in the last 5 years. And the biggest difference that it made for him is he put it in his Google Calendar. And I know that that sounds really simple, but what was happening is if he put it in his Google Calendar and it said time with Mila, his daughter, it would show up in his Google Calendar. And if he went to schedule something during that time, eventually that little guilt was kicking in, right? This is time with Mila, right? I shouldn't be scheduling this here. And so eventually now he just knows it by heart, right? It's just a routine part of his day that he knows by 6 o'clock he's done, right? And he's having dinner with his family. And so it takes time, right? It takes commitment to that. But the Google Calendar, or whatever calendar you're using, I don't care, as long as it's some kind of a calendar, that you can have an overlay that says from 9 to 10, I'm prospecting, right? And so if I go to schedule something, that nagging voice is there that, oh, nope, that's my prospecting time. Should I really be scheduling this here? Okay. All right. So time blocking, right? So you accounting for your time, right? And then replacing it with vital activities. So this is mandatory, right? Is being really a really good steward of your time and being aware of where you're spending your time. All right, so pages 16 through 18, we're gonna do, how am I doing on time here? Speaking of time, I'm good. All right, so we're gonna dive into this. So what is lead gen considered? And I already kind of touched on this, but face-to-face, right? Phone calls, sending an email, be careful of email because it is the rejection-free zone. And if you get a lead that has a phone number, call it. I see too many people, well, I sent them an email, I sent them a text. If they give you a phone number, that is a legit person who wants to talk to you. Call them, right? Pick up the phone and call them. It's just so funny how people are phone averse, and I get it. It's the rejection. We don't want to be rejected, but that's a part of the business, right? Is being rejected. So finding people either face-to-face, phone. I will also say that Facebook Messenger is a viable way to communicate. Again, you have to be honest with yourself. Are you engaging in a meaningful conversation about real estate? Okay. But I will tell you, I have a 100% response rate when I use Facebook Messenger. So Jessica, you could use Facebook Messenger, but don't just pounce on people and be like, hey, I haven't talked to you in a long time. Do you want to buy or sell a house? Right? It's an organic process. So give you an example. I have one of my past clients, her name is Nancy, hadn't talked to her in a while and I wanted to reconnect. Now we're very active on social media. She has a new puppy. And so I started the message out with, hey, Nancy, I love seeing the pictures of Mason. I bet he has the best puppy breath. And who doesn't want to talk about their dog, right? So almost immediately I get a response back. He's the best. How are you? Right? And so now the conversation goes into a whole other direction. She knows I'm in real estate. And so eventually the conversation is, how's the market? Right? And so that's how you can start it out. So use your social media to do a little stalking before you reach out to people, because it gives you a starting point, right? Using the Ford gives you a base to start with. Okay. And inevitably, you guys, the conversation will turn to, how are you? How's the market? Right? And that's your opportunity to talk to them. For sale by owners, Zillow is a good resource. For as much as I have a love-hate with Zillow, you can find for sale by owners on Zillow. Be careful though if you're reaching out through Zillow, because those leads are connected to agents that are paying Zillow. So you're better off to actually go buy the property, because if you try using the phone number, you're going to get connected with an agent. So go buy the property, right? Go actually knock on the door or send them something in the mail. Expireds. This is the best month of the year for expired listings. That's the end of the year, right? A lot of contracts are written to expire by the December 31st. So it's a big month. I'm always shocked at how many properties are expired every month, even with the market as hot as it is. Thursday, Nate and I are going to be doing a mastermind on a little bit of marketing, but also where do we find inventory? You don't have to be participating in the 120-day listing challenge to show up to that mastermind. So I'd encourage you guys to come. That will be a great share. And anytime you can spend time with Nate is always valuable. Traditional or social networks, right? Using our social media, just sold or just listed notifications, sending stuff out in the mail, and then farming, which we talked about farming last week and how to create a farm, which Tommy, that recording, I know that was the one you missed, right? Because your internet was out. Yeah, so that's out. That should be on the Inner Circle or on the Remax Professionals page to watch the replay on that. I also think unsolicited CMAs. And so what do I mean by that? So if you look at the MLS and you look at people who bought during the REO market, they're all sitting on a pot of equity. And so could you send an unsolicited CMA to someone who's been in their house 10 or 15 years? Average person stays in their home 14 years, right? They're sitting on a pot of equity. Could you send them something that says, hey, did you know your home has equity? And did you know with the interest rates as low as they are, what that does for your buying power? And so a lot of those were first-time home buyers that bought, right? Or investors, and maybe that investor wants to cash out and then now take that money and parlay it into a 1031 and buy multiple properties. And so in my mind, I would go into the database and look and see who is some unsolicited CMAs that I can market to, that people bought those houses and they're sitting on equity. All right, so lead conversion. So asking the pre-listing questions. When we get into the conversion classes, you guys are going to get the pre-listing questionnaires, and so you'll have that. But getting into the when you get a lead for a listing, asking the right questions. How much do they owe on their home? What are the improvements that they've made? Getting prepared so that when you sit down to do the CMA, you've got as much information as you need. Okay. Assembling the pricing tools. So there is a class on pricing as well that we walk you through how to do pricing. I would also encourage you, if you get a chance to do any other classes besides me that's on pricing, I would encourage you guys to do that. There's tools out there. You got the cloud CMA, you have toolkit, you have RPR. So there's a lot of options for pricing, and I don't care which one you use as long as you're a master at it. And running good comps should take you an hour or two, really looking at everything that's in the MLS, your map searches, your tax record searches, really, because our job when we price is to be put on our investigator hat and discover why the homes that were around that property sold, and why did they sell for the price that they sold for. Okay. Confirming the appointment. Call to confirm. Every industry except for real estate confirms the appointment, right? You don't go to your doctor's office without getting a phone call or a text saying, hey, don't forget about your doctor's appointment, right? So call to confirm. Things happen, people forget. They might not realize if there's two people involved in making the decision. Maybe one person got called away for work. So make sure you call to confirm, okay? Prepare the listing agreement. Back in the day, we actually had paper, right, where you had 3 copies. So press hard because you're going through 3 copies. Now everything's digital. But could you get that all prepared ahead of time so that when you show up to the listing appointment, you could either have them sign on your tablet or email it to them? You certainly could, and that is definitely a conversion. The ABCs, right? Always be closing. That is a closing tool to have it all ready to go. Okay. It demonstrates to the seller that, hey, this guy's prepared, right? He's ready to get our listing. Getting on the listing channel. This is getting your head in the right spot, right? Visualizing the outcome. And I know it might sound a little hoo-ha, but a lot of what we do, you guys, is mindset. It's all about your mindset and thinking, can I get this listing? Will I get this listing, right? The agents that are having killer years, man, they lathered up with sanitizer, put on their mask, and went to work, right? When everybody else was scared and stayed home. And so getting your mind in the right spot. I love music, and so sometimes that's playing a song that inspires me. It's not the Rocky theme song, but that is a good one, right? So whatever it is that gets you really just dialed in, right? So that you go in there with your hair on fire and you get the listing. Arrive on time. I cannot stress the importance of being a timely, punctual person. I was raised in the environment that if you're not 10 minutes early, you're late. So I've spent a lot of time in my car waiting that 10 minutes, because 10 minutes, that for some people, that's a lot of time, right? I will call even if I think I'm going to be 30 seconds late, because you need to show respect of that person's time. If you don't, and you're a late person, it demonstrates to them that you can't handle their stuff, right? You're not prepared. And so if you are, and none of you are, because you're always here on time, but if people who struggle with that, you got to set an alarm an hour early, right? So that you get there on time, because it definitely is very unprofessional to be late. Having the listing conversation. So we want to set the tone, right? What's the, what's the goal of the seller? One of the best listing appointments I ever went on with Nate, we never talked about price. We never talked about commission. She was an elderly lady who had lost her husband, so she was downsizing. And we walked the house and we sat at her kitchen table, and he just asked her, what is your goal and how can we help you get there? We got done. we walked to the door. She said, send me your contract and tell me where you want me to price it. It was flawless and beautiful. And, you know, people don't care how much you know unless they know how much you care, right? And so setting the tone, right, for the conversation, all of you could sit down at someone's kitchen table and have a meaningful conversation about selling real estate, regardless of how many years of experience you have. Okay. So when we lead by the heart, we don't fail. Uncovering their needs, right? So helping her, what was her next move, and helping her with that, prioritizing those needs. So, you know, the two biggest things that people have is time and money. So how long is it going to take, or I have to be somewhere in a certain amount of time, and then how much money am I going to make, right? And so those are the two biggest things that people have as their needs. So helping them, and sometimes those flip flop, right? It might be money at first, and then now it becomes time. Okay. So helping them prioritize that, talking about pricing. We want to lead them down a path that helps them discover where they should price their home. If we come in with the authoritative attitude that I know everything, you know, that only works if the seller agrees with you. Okay, so leading them down a path that helps them to take responsibility for how they price their home. So reviewing that and then agreeing on what's the right price. Okay, we have to agree on that. If you have a situation where you guys like each other, you know, we like each other, we want to do business, but we just can't agree on price, then do an appraisal. Have an appraisal come in, the appraiser come in and have a third party. And what I've done in the past is I have the seller pay for it up front and then I reimburse them at closing. I don't want to pay for it and then them not list their house with me, right? So I have them put the sweat in the game at first and then I reimburse them. When we have a third party come in, that helps to soften the blow, right? And then now we can use that as a marketing tool. You know, you can say, hey, you know, price it $100 less than the appraisal, and now I can say price below appraisal. Nobody needs to know that's only $100, right? But it sounds good, and it sounds good in the eye of the buyer, right? And in some cases, that appraisal can be rewritten so that the buyer gets that appraisal and it saves the money of having the appraisal. Okay, not in all cases, but in some cases. Let's see. So the roles, when you get into the conversion classes, we're going to go over what is your role as the realtor and what is the client's role as the seller, right? And I absolutely love that tool that you guys are going to get in that class. Agreeing on those, right? Setting the expectation. You know, the biggest complaint the Department of Real Estate has is it's usually over an expectation that a client had and it wasn't communicated. One of my favorite scripts is just, how do I win with you and how do I lose with you? Now, if you're a first-time home seller, you know, they have no experience, right? And so what's their bar? Their experience is what they witnessed their parents or their friends or somebody that they know go through, right? And so what's their expectation? And I think, you know, when we can be that humble to ask that question of what do you expect out of this transaction, that makes us so much better, right? And it just opens the line of communication with people. And then closing for the listing, right? We got to explain the listing agreement and all of the documents. I absolutely love electronic signatures. It has made our lives so much easier, but I also think it's a huge, giant liability because I know that there are plenty of people, that husband and wife, and the wife is signing all the documents for the husband, and he's not actually looking at that stuff. Okay, so be really careful. If you're going to use electronic signatures, make sure you're going over it with them so that they know what they're signing. Second time people will often, you know, just click through things and they're not really reading stuff. So it's still your job to make sure that they have a full comprehension of what they're signing. Okay. And then staging, if you're going to do a staging plan, I love the idea of offering free staging or free staging consultation. You know, when the internet came out, the big thing was free CMA, right? We'll give you a free analysis, market analysis. That's all old now, right? And now you have Zestimate, which is so much cooler to say than CMA, right? And so how about offering a free staging consultation? There is, you know, you can go, and I don't know the name of the website, but if you Google it, you'll be able to find it. There is a staging association, kind of like, you know, the Realtors Association, and they will come out for a flat fee and do a staging consultation for you. Now, you could also go buy a book or take a class and learn a little bit about staging so that could be a part of your presentation, okay? Whatever you can do to set yourself apart from the competition. And then, of course, signing the listing agreement. So those are all lead conversion activities that are money-making activities, right? All right, so administration prep. So measuring the rooms and completing the MLS input sheet. This is super vital, right? First of all, we're not supposed to leave any blanks on things. And so when we skip over the room measurements, I get it, right? I don't want to walk the room and measure it, or I don't want to be held liable. You can buy an electronic gizmo from either, you can get one at Weimar, or you can buy one on Amazon that you put it against the wall and it shoots a laser beam across the room and tells you the room measurements, right? And so putting that in there, it's important. When I first started selling real estate, room measurements were huge. You know, people needed to know how big a master bedroom was or how big a living room was. And so just don't shortcut that and take corners. And how cool will that make you look, Daniel, if you whip out a laser beam in a listing appointment and the seller, you know, thinks that's awesome because, you know, you got these gadgets, right? And making sure if you're going to copy a listing, because a lot of properties obviously have been bought and sold more than once. And so if you're going to copy the listing out of MLS, make sure that you verify the information is correct. School zones change, zip codes sometimes change. The other agent could have put wrong information in there. So make sure that you're putting the correct information. Interior photos, interior, exterior. Professional photography is so cheap these days, you guys. Arizona Imaging is $100. You get a ton of professional photography. You get a virtual tour. It's so worth the money to do it. If you are going to take your own pictures, make sure you know what you're doing. You can't have people in the pictures. Put the toilet seat down. Don't take the selfie in the mirror. Right? I'm amazed at even some of these high-end listings of agents. I'm like, oh my gosh, these photos are terrible. The photos are the place that people start, right? They will reject a home. My sister-in-law, they own a house now, but prior to that, they were renting. And I kept sending her this house, and the pictures were terrible, and she kept bypassing it. And I said, you got to go look at this house. This is the house you need to rent. And sure enough, they lived there for a few years, but she was not looking at that house because the photos were horrible. And so when they moved out, the same agent used those same damn photos again. she hasn't learned anything. These are terrible. And I get it. Oh, it's just a rental. Well, it's just a rental, but my sister-in-law made a decision to reject that home because of those photos, right? So they tell 1,000 words. The other thing too is the consumer doesn't want to see 5 shots of the front yard in slightly different views, right? So make sure that you're not overdoing it with the photos and that you're using photos that really, 25, because that's the number on realtor.com, that really capture that home. Okay. And if you're using Design Center stuff, so within your Max Center on Remax, you go into Design Center, within a couple hours of you listing a home, you're going to get an email that has a link, and you get a flyer, a postcard, a link for YouTube if you're going to push your content out on YouTube, and a social media link. And so how it loads is it pulls your first, I think it's 8 or 10 photos, and that's what's created for your flyer and your postcard and stuff. So if you're going to use that tool, which they're great flyers, might as well, right? It's already done for you. If you're going to use that, then you want to make sure you put your best photos in first, so that gets pulled. Otherwise, you'll have to do edits on the flyer when you get it. Okay. So take advantage of that. That's an awesome tool that you guys get for Remax. Signage, right, and a lockbox. I think that those are important. Part of our job is to display that home the best that we can and let people know it's for sale. So if you're not putting up a sign, we're not fulfilling that. Lockboxes just make it so much easier to do business. There are some agents that won't even show houses that don't have lockboxes. So make sure, there are some people that are uncomfortable with that, but they're very secure these days. They're not on codes that everybody knows. They're very secure, and we know instantaneously when someoe's in the home. A thank you letter. So we get the listing, we send a letter out. I think, you could have your TC do this for you too, is that, thank you. It's going to be my pleasure to serve you. And here's what you can expect next, right? Because, when you're on the listing appointment, they're going to forget, they're going to be excited. They're going to forget what's happening next. So if you kind of have a little checklist that says, hey, this is what you can expect to happen next. Having the file for the broker, right? Again, TC helps with all of that. We have showing time, which is amazing. Such an easy tool for setting up showings, and the seller can communicate right directly with them. Plus, you can send out feedback requests through showing time. And then the listing agreement, MLS sheets, all the documents that they sign, you need to make sure that the seller gets a copy of those, the signed copies. And then putting them into Bouge or whatever CRM you're using so that you can stay in touch with them and stay on top of it, right? And then the loan payoff, I actually want to get that before I even go out to the property. That's one of my questions I ask on my intake, because I need to know how much they owe on the property. And I want to know if they have more than one mortgage, because that's going to shift my conversation. If I know that they have 2 mortgages, and there are still some people out there that are upside down on their mortgages, not a lot, but there are still some. So I want to ask that question. The other reason I ask it is I prepare cost sheets before I go on my listing appointments. And typically I'm going to have a window where, let's say 300 to 325 is my window, and I might want them to price it at 315. So I'm going to run a cost sheet at 300, 315, and 325. And I'm going to build in closing costs, home warranty, loan payoff. Okay. And the reason I do that is I would rather have the conversation with them up front that they are going to expect to receive an offer that has a buyer asking for closing costs. If we get an offer that doesn't, great, then I've just put that money back in their pocket and I look awesome. If I don't have that conversation with them, now it becomes a surprise, right? And nobody likes surprises, especially when you're selling something like a house. And so I want to have that conversation up front so that they're aware that this is a possibility that could happen. Same thing with the home warranty. And then the loan payoff, that gives them real numbers of what their net is going to be. Because again, two things people want to know is how much money am I going to make and how long is it going to take? Okay. All right. So the next part is marketing and exposure. So putting the house in MLS and other websites, that once you put it in MLS, it syndicates literally to thousands of websites. So make sure that your stuff is accurate, because the only thing that ever really changes on those syndicated sites is the price and the status. So if you go live and let's say it takes you 24 hours to get photos in, there's a probability that all those little websites will never have photos because it wasn't in the initial push. So make sure everything's accurate. Okay. If you're going to do just listed phone calls or making phone calls to the listing around it, make sure that, or the houses around it, make sure that you're getting those numbers from a reputable source, right? You don't want to be a victim of a do not call. Do not call complaint. Okay. Just listed postcards. Again, if you don't have the budget for this, could you door knock and take a flyer of the house and let people know that you listed it? For sure. And if you don't want to door knock today, you could still leave the flyer on their door, right? And just maybe don't door knock. Okay. The concept with that is that in here, it talks about 25 door knocks and then 50 phone calls. I like to keep it simple, 10, 10, 20. So 10 on either side of the house and 20 across the street. Okay. That makes it easy. And then again, so any kind of flyers you could push out, definitely putting it out on your social media. I don't think you necessarily need to send it to agents, which is in the content here, because they're going to get it through the MLS. Agents can see it there. Soliciting feedback. This is important. If the house smells like cats, your seller needs to know that, because that could be an issue that causes the house not to sell. Now, do we need to say it in a kind and respectful way? But we definitely want to solicit feedback, because feedback is, and we want tangible feedback. If it smells like cats, that's tangible. I can do something about that, right? If you just say it's overpriced, but you don't give me anything tangible meaning I can change it, right? And so when you're giving feedback, make sure you're giving tangible feedback, okay? Weekly updates. I have a rule in my business that if my client calls me first, I have let them down. And so I always want to be the one calling them. When we sold my father-in-law's trailer a couple years ago, I had to call them. Unfortunately, we were stuck using the mobile home park because it was a trailer in a mobile home park. I had to call them every single week and ask them to drop the price and ask for feedback. Not one time did they call us. And it was really frustrating. And we only had a short window of time to sell this property. And so for me, that really affirmed that my core value of calling my client first, why it's so important. So make sure that you're giving them feedback, right? And you're updating them. And even if you have no updates, that is better than not giving them anything, okay? So you can't over communicate enough. So updates with that. Now you can also go into MLS and in Zillow and do reports that show how many times the property has been viewed on Zillow. You can also see in MLS how many times it's been blocked or removed from someone's search. And that's really good information too, right? Because it tells them that my house is being rejected, basically. So you can pull those reports from MLS. Did you have something you wanted to say, Daniel?
I was just going to say that when you make those calls weekly, like you do for your business, Sarah, you're in control of when you call too, because you're going to do it probably, hopefully at a convenient time for them. But I've done that with other businesses for 20 years because I'm in control of the time versus them calling me at 9 o'clock on a Friday night.
Absolutely. Yeah. And they don't, this is all scary. It's every day at the office for us. If they haven't moved in 14 years, they feel uncomfortable, right? It's awkward, right? So we want to make sure we're giving them comfort in that, and you can't over communicate. I mean, that's just risk management 101, right? Can't over communicate. All right, so I went too far. Presenting and negotiating, right? So proactively soliciting multiple offers, presenting those to the clients, right? And even if they're lowball offers, you still got to present them. And the concept is that if you get an offer, let's try to put it together, right? Don't let it die on your desk. Changing the status in MLS. If you have multiple offers, make sure you're using that in MLS that lets people know there is a option in there that says multiple offers received, and try to get that status changed as quickly as possible, because it sucks showing a property that already has an accepted offer, because it's a waste of time, and it's disappointing to the buyer. Okay. So make sure you get that changed right away. You got to open escrow and get the contract turned in. You get a short window of time, otherwise you get fined from the company. So make sure you're turning that stuff in. And the rules that we have around contracts and deadlines, those are put in place to keep us out of hot water, and they keep our E&O insurance down. We have some of the cheapest E&O insurance compared to other real estate offices, and it's because we don't get sued. And we don't get sued because we have all these rules, right? And so I know that sometimes they might seem a little annoying, but they are there for a reason. Okay. And then, of course, negotiating repairs, and then making sure that those repairs get done, and that you get copies of receipts that get to your client. All right, so closing prep. So scheduling the closing, that typically the title company typically does that, but it's still your responsibility to make sure it gets done. Communicating with all parties throughout the transaction. The worst is when you have a buyer's agent go rogue and they're just, they disappear, right? And you have no idea what's going on. So make sure you're communicating all the way through, even if it's bad news, right? Even if it's bad news, we have to communicate all the way through. Reviewing the title commitment. I would encourage all three of you that are new, get with a title company and have them show you how to review that and ask questions. Those things are like reading Greek, but it is still your job to review it and make sure that there's nothing in there. You will find that your good title company, you'll have a relationship, and I would encourage all of you guys to look at Title Alliance. That is our in-house title company. So you will find that if you develop a relationship with Veronica or Laban, that they'll let you know if there's something in that title report, right? They'll give you a heads up, but they don't always have to, right? They should, but they don't always. And if it's not, let's say you go to and work with a different title company and you have no relationship with them, they don't have any allegiance to you, right? And so you need to make sure you understand how to read those. And then reviewing the closing statement, also part of your job. And if you've negotiated concessions, I don't care who you're representing, if you've negotiated concessions, you want to make sure that those numbers are correct, and that if it's your seller, that they're not overpaying, right? I had a situation years ago on a deal that the title company forgot to order the HOA, and so they were trying to charge my client a rush fee on the HOA. And my client was an investor from Canada, would have never known any different. And of course, I reviewed the settlement statement and was like, no, you're not charging them that. This was your mistake. And so if I hadn't done it, my client would have been none the wiser, right? And the title company would have gotten away with that. Attending the closing. Today, that's a little bit challenging with COVID, but it's definitely good practice to do, especially if you've got a first-time home buyer. If you've ever had a situation where you've needed a lawyer to represent you, there is something very comforting having that person stand next to you, knowing that you could tell them anything in the world and they have to keep it a secret, right? And so when you go to a closing, that's scary stuff. You got a stack of paper this big, right? And so you're signing your life away, right? And so being there, even if you're just there to look pretty, there is something very comforting about that, right? And if something happens, if there's something wrong, you're there to help and you're there to fix it. And that does happen where I've had it where interest rates were wrong on loan docs, or weird stuff happening. And so it's good for you to be there. And again, right now with COVID, I don't know. I know that they're limiting the amount of people that can be in closings, so you have to navigate that the best that you can. All right, lastly here, and then we're going to move on to buyer vital activities, is post-closing activities. So sending out a survey or getting them to review you on Zillow. We can't fix something that happened in a transaction if we don't know about it, right? If they're closing and they're disappointed and they're upset about something, and it's something you could fix, right? Wouldn't you want that opportunity so that you can guarantee future business, right? We want to be able to fix that. And then, if they put something out, then that gets other people tooting your horn, right? On social media, and then other people will chime in, and it becomes a beautiful thing. Change the status of MLS. That's also a finable thing, you guys, if you don't do it in a timely manner. And you also need to make sure that it's accurate. Oftentimes in a contract, terms will change, we'll negotiate something or a price change, and then we don't update the MLS to reflect that, they are checking that stuff. And so it is a finable offense if you have inaccurate information. Okay. Again, just sold. Can you door knock and let people know that, hey, I sold this property, and oh, by the way, I sold it for X dollars, right? Again, maybe we're not door knocking right now, but could we leave a flyer? And the same thing with phone calls, Red X, Vulcan, any of those companies that you're going to buy lists. If you're going to, I would suggest Red X. They have the best reputation. However, do not run out and buy something like that unless you are 100% committed to doing it, because it doesn't make sense to spend money on a tool that you're not going to use. Okay. And cold calling is not for all of us. If I had to cold call, I'd be a barista at Starbucks, because it is not in my DNA. It's not something I enjoy to do. And so, and that there's no wrong, right or wrong. Some people love that. You talk to Brady Bosworth, one of our agents, he'll sit on the Mojo dialer and do 100 outbound calls, and he'll set appointments, and it's just who he is and how he does his business, and good for him, right? But that's not for me. So if you're going to use one of those tools, make sure that you're going to actually commit to using it. All right, let's shift gears and talk about buyer vital activities. And so again, this is on page 19, lead gen, finding people, right? And that's where most agents fail, is they don't get in front of enough people every single day, every single week, in order to hit their goals. Okay. You have your network and your farming. Oh, real quick before I move on from that, the 3-2-1 concept, and I know some of you might have heard us talk about this, but 3-2-1 is basically making contact with 3 people every day. So making contact, not leaving a message. And the rule of thumb is that for every 5 outbound calls, you should make contact. So do the math for me. If I want to make contact with 3 people, times 5 is what, 15? So you might possibly have to make 15 phone calls in order to connect with 3 people. But do you think, Tommy, if you talk to 3 people every single day about buying or selling, that would make a difference in your business?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Absolutely, right?
Absolutely.
The 2 is to add 2 new people. And I know people get stuck on that one, because like, well, where am I going to find two new people? From the 3-2-1, right? From making the 3s, you're going to find people. There's, every single day. And again, if you're wearing your Remax swag, I know I've told this story before, but I sold a house I went to buy a new laptop, and I had my Remax balloon on, and the kid that sold me a laptop, him and his wife wanted to buy a house. So guess what? Took him out and sold him a house the next week. And all because of the Remax balloon, right? If I hadn't had that on, that conversation may not have gone down that way, right? So the 2 is adding 2 new people, and 1 is learn 1 new thing, right? Learn 1 new thing. So you took a class, so you're learning something new, right? So three contacts, 2 new, one learn 1 new thing. So when we talk about that, so farming, your spheres of influence, your network, right? Open houses. If you talk to Steve Cushing on Nate's team, he's killing it with the open houses right now. Yard signs and home ads. So Facebook, cheapest advertising you guys can do right now, right? Running some Facebook ads. The internet, right? You have remax.com. You can do stuff on Craigslist. There's even Facebook Marketplace, right? We have all those places that you can advertise on the internet. And again, just listed, just sold postcards. Those are ways to generate leads too. Lead conversion, and on the mass mail, bulk mail, you're just listed, just sold, it is a numbers game, you guys, and you have to send out enough. And you got to think about, if you send out 5,000 postcards, and that's a big number, but you send out 5,000 postcards, you might only have 1% of that audience that's even thinking about selling. But if it costs you, say that costs you $2,000 to send out 5,000 postcards, and you got 1 lead, and it was a $15,000 commission, did it make sense to spend that? Right. And I'm not saying you guys go run out and do that, but when you get to that point in your career, yeah, there is a big cost, but the return, 1 lead turns out to be a $15,000 commission. It was well worth spending that $2,000. Okay. Lead conversion. So having a meeting in the office, I cannot stress the importance of a buyer consultation. You've got to gain the commitment. The consumer thinks that buying a house is what they see on HGTV. Right? They think, I'm going to go look at 3 cabins in Alaska, and I'm going to find one, and I'm going to write an offer for $100,000 less than asking price. That's not reality, right? It's reality TV, but it's not reality, right? And so having a meeting in the office, you set the tone, right? And if you spend an hour and go through the business, or go through the purchase contract and all of the disclosures, I promise you at the end of that hour, they're going to be begging for representation. because that is scary. The contract's scary, right? And so again, the fun part is watching TV and sifting through the internet, looking at pictures of bathrooms. But reality is there's a lot of stuff that could go wrong in buying a home. And so you've got to gain their commitment. And the way to do that is through a consultation. Okay. So then getting on the selling channel, right? Get your mind in the right spot. That what is the visualize the outcome, right? The outcome is that they want to work with you, right? And that we go out and we're intentional and we find a home. Having the buyer conversation, right? So building rapport, again, assuming that you don't know this person, but even if you do know them, you could still build rapport with them, right? And using the Ford script, setting the tone, helping them uncover and prioritize their needs and wants. Helping them understand what that is, right? If they're a first-time home buyer, they're all over the place with what their needs and wants are, right? And I always tell people, if you have a list of 10 things that you want in a home and we find a house that has 7 or 8 of those, that's probably the house you should buy, because there is no house that's perfect. Even people who build custom homes will have things that they wish they had done differently after the fact. Okay. So if you find one that's got 7 or 8, that's probably the one you should buy. Okay. Verifying their motivation. So when do they need to move? If they're living with their parents and they have 3 kids and 2 dogs, they got a pretty strong motivation, right? They may not have a financial obligation to something, but they got a strong motivation, because that does not sound like fun. Check their financial ability, right? How much can they qualify for? Most people these days, I think, are coming to us pre-qualified, or at least have a pretty good idea. If someone's referred to you and they're in the very beginning stages, this is where you definitely want to have a couple good lenders that you work with. And I think you need to have more than, different personality styles, different needs of the consumer, different needs, meaning personality and or product, right? Someone who, you work with, Motto Mortgage, for example, I haven't worked with them, so I'm not sure what products they have, but, someone who's got tough credit might need to go to somebody else, right? Because they don't fit the Motto Mortgage model, right? That was hard to say. And so having a couple different, people in your pocket, right? And lenders do burn out. And so, that's the other thing too, is having people that you can go to, right? All right, so transition, again, you guys are going to get the roles. So what is the role of the client and the role of you as their realtor, and then agreeing on those. And then the buyer representation agreement. I'll be transparent and tell you that I have never really implemented that in my business. I think that it's something we should probably consider, just because of the commission challenges that we're having right now. There's a lot of low ball commissions happening out there, and that's because of the inventory. And so how do you protect your paycheck, right? And it's through having a buyer representation agreement. That basically says that if you agree to pay me X dollars, and if the commission is less than that on the house that they're buying, they're obligated financially through that piece of paper to pay you the difference. Okay. Not always a comfortable conversation, and we should probably have a class on from some agents that are really killing it with the buyer brokers. I have done it in the past if I felt like someone's being squirrely and that they might, end up trying to buy something without me. But it really comes down to your value. And so what I have found to be successful is that I use the agency. So if I have them sign the agency agreement and we talk about fiduciary duties, then typically I don't get burned. But right now with the commissions the way that they are, I think the buyer representation agreement might be a really important tool to dust off and use, because, again, protect your paycheck. Daniel, you're going to say something?
I was just saying, when I did my contracts class to get my license 2 months ago, the broker who taught that class said he just says he blames it on us. He says, as a salesperson, to say, my broker recommends you sign this, instead of having to, that way you don't have to be the bad guy yourself.
Mm-hmm. For sure, you could say that it's a company policy. It just, again, it comes down to your value and how you present that to the client. And could that, could the difference in commission be built into closing costs that the seller pays? It could be, that's one way to get around the client actually paying it. But if they see your value, right, and they recognize what you're doing for them, then, it's a less of a hurdle to get over, right? But it's really something that I'm going to put that on my list of class ideas, because I think we need to have a class on how to navigate that, again, just with the way things are right now. So reviewing the contract, again, that's my whole buyer presentation. Years ago, I had a buyer book when I was on Nate's team. I don't have anything like that now. You could go to the title company and get a buyer book if you wanted to. It's all branded to you. But literally, you guys, I just go through the contract. I go through the contract and I get all the addendums signed in advance, right? Because once they start signing stuff, that's a part of the closing process too, right? It's gaining the commitment that they're signing things. Plus, it explains all of it. And like I said, when I go through the contract, by the end of it, there's no question about needing representation. Okay. And then, of course, getting all that stuff signed. So administration part, right? So sending the thank you letter, again, you know, and also I think the what comes next could be with a buyer too. Creating the file, you guys can go ahead and set the file up in SkySlope before you have a contract written. And that way you can keep all your stuff in there. You guys do know that you can keep text message threads in SkySlope too. Emails can be pushed over there. So anything that is, you know, documenting the process, that if it comes down and there's a lawsuit, that you're covering your butt, okay? So make sure that you're creating a documentation of all that stuff. Talking to the lender. Now, if they've come to you pre-qualified, you know, my objective, I don't know how come my door keeps getting opened. If they come to me pre-qualified, I'm still going to probably try to push them to my preferred lender, just because, right? I want to work with my preferred lender. And anytime, and Debbie, I'm sure you can attest to this, anytime I've had a deal where it wasn't, they usually are shitstorm. So a shitstorm. And so I want them to work with my person if I can. And sometimes, you know, that you can't get them to. And like I said, it is a challenge. Okay. So making sure, now don't put people in your car that aren't pre-qualified or haven't shown you proof of funds. Now, that being said, there may be some times that you would do that just to solidify the relationship, or it's someone that you know, yeah, this person's good. But typically, if they're not, you're wasting your time. Okay, so make sure that they're pre-qualified. Put them into Booge or whatever database, again, so you can stay in touch with them. Searching the MLS and for sale by owners, anywhere you can scour, right, to try to find inventory. You can also do reverse farming, right? What is reverse farming? That's where I know I want a 2,000 square foot house in Arrowhead Ranch. So I go in the tax record and I find all 2,000 square foot houses in Arrowhead Ranch, and I send a letter to those people and I say, hey, I have a buyer who's pre-qualified, who's looking for a 2,000 square foot house in Arrowhead Ranch. Are you interested in selling? And so that's one way to drum up some inventory. You know, if you've got, you know, if you're struggling with that. Definitely, you know, verify the availability. I think showing time has made that a lot easier for us in MLS, when a property goes pending, right? And having that tool in there, because before we had showing time, you'd have to call the agent. Hopefully they answer. If they don't answer, then you got to wait for them to call you back. And showing time has made it a lot easier. So love that tool. I wasn't sure at first, but I really do like it. Preparing the showing. So what I do is I print out the consumer friendly copy of the MLS. I highlight the important things because those things are really hard to read, right? So I might highlight the bedrooms, the baths, the square footage, the school district, the subdivision, and maybe the cross streets and the tax record. So those are all things that are important, relevant things to a consumer. And then I put them in order of how we're going to tour. And so that we start with that in order. And then we go over it before. So I'll have them come to the office, right, to meet me or wherever we're meeting. And I go through the package and give them their copy. I have my copy. And then as we're touring the homes, I want to be closing. Okay. So my objective is, if I do a consultation on a Wednesday afternoon, we set an appointment for Saturday, you're buying a freaking house on Saturday. That's my goal. Right now, is that always realistic in today's market? Maybe not, but that is my objective, and I plant that objective in their mind as well. And you know, it's a funny thing when all that energy, collective energy, is focused on one thing. What happens, right? And so, so we, you know, and again, I get it, reality in this market that may not happen, but that's my goal. So we go out Saturday as we're touring, and by the way, I want them, this is in the materials, but I want them in the car with me if I can. I know that COVID's a little weird, so maybe we have a caveat for right now, but typically in a normal world, I want them in the car with me because it's so much easier. Traffic sucks. And so if I miss a light or the directions are wrong, I don't have to worry about them tailing behind me, right? But there's a lot of chatter that happens while you're driving around. You're getting to know them. They're commenting on the house. You're hearing things. And one of the things that I want to do is when we get to house number 2, okay, how does this compare to house number 1? When we get to house number 3, how does this compare to this? And so when we get to house number 4, we're eliminating one of those other houses because they're only allowed to have top 3. Okay, does that make sense? Because at the end of the tour, when I get down to it, I want my top 3. I'm taking them back to the top 3. We're looking at them again, and then we're going to the office and writing an offer. So that's my objective. Okay. Now, again, I know inventory's tight, but if you can make that your plan instead of these onesie twosies, running and showing one or two house here or there, it's less work and it's, a better experience for them. And I think it's just a more proficient way to do things. And again, I get it. I totally know that the inventory's low, but that's just, again, just my personal way I do things. So, again, have them in the car with you. We have high, insurance for a reason. So I know some people talk about liability, but that's why we have the insurance we do. It's just a better way to do things, and if they say that they're relocating and they rented a car and they want to drive, jump in the car with them. I sold a house one time to a lady who had 3 sets of twins. And so I had to ride with her because I couldn't accommodate all of those car seats. Right. And so I had to ride with her. So just whatever you're doing, try to be in the car together. Okay. And then when you tour the homes, don't give away the sweet spot, right? Or if it's got a killer view, try to let them discover that themselves. Okay. And you need to be looking for things that are important, like termite tubes or water damage, or things that are going to be an issue in the appraisal and or the inspection. Okay. That's not to freak them out, but just to be the eyes, right, that they're not looking for that stuff. Okay. So touring the house, looking for that stuff. And then, again, go back, look at the top 3, take them back to the office and write an offer. All right. So writing the offer. So you need to call the agent, right? Call the agent and talk to them and find out what the scoop is. If you need to know if you're in multiple offers, and has that agent, is the listing agent one of the agents that wrote an offer? Because if they are, you need to know that, right? I want to ask questions about the seller's plans, because I want to write my offer so that it's clean and enticing, and that the seller doesn't want to counter me. Okay. So I want to know, and the title company, their moving time, where are they going, right? I guess Debbie had to leave. I want to know any details that I can about that seller so that I can put that into the contract. Okay. So then negotiating that. So call before, talk to the listing agent, find out the scoop, write the offer, send the offer, call to confirm or text to confirm that the offer was received. Okay, you can't, just because we live in a digital world doesn't mean that they actually received it. So you want to make sure that they received the offer. Now you can take that a step further and ask to present the contract in person. So that is your fiduciary duties, right? And really representing that buyer. Most people are going to tell you no because the seller's not comfortable. But if you're in a multiple offer situation, I think you have an obligation to the client you represent to ask if you can present that contract in person. I remember years ago, it was when the boom happened. I won out in a multiple offer situation, and I swear to you, I think the reason I won was two things. I went to the seller's house, I sat at their kitchen table, and I presented the contract. But another thing I did is when I got there, I noticed all the shoes at the front door. So I took my shoes off. And then I sat at their kitchen table. So I think those 2 things right there won that seller over. So not everybody's going to be obliging to that, but you should offer to do that. Okay. To present the contract in person. So make sure that they received it. Right. And then you got to open escrow right away. Right. And get earnest money deposited. That's super important. And again, deliver the contract. So the signed contract needs to be given to all parties. Right. And make sure that they get all of that. Okay. Schedule the home inspection, attend the home inspection. It's not in the materials, but I think that's super critical. And you can tell when you're on the listing side and you get the buyer's repair request and there's 47 items, I guarantee you that agent didn't go to the inspection. They were not there. And again, think about if you've ever had a time that you needed a suit to represent you. There's something very comforting about that. And home inspections are scary. I don't care if you're the buyer or the seller, they're nervy. And so you being there, and I want to ask questions. I want that inspector to show them stuff. And then, what is the cost and the convenience? So how much is that going to cost after the fact, or how inconvenient is it going to be for you to do that? I don't want to nickel and dime the seller for petty things. If there's something big, like it needs a new roof, I want to go for the roof. I'm not going to ask for all the petty stuff, right? And so you want to look at the things that are really important, safety, fire, plumbing, all those things that are really critical. And so if you go to the home inspection, you ask questions, you can dive in more, and then that helps to settle your client's nerves, right? If they hear it from the inspector. Good home inspector, you guys, probably up there with lender, maybe even before the lender. Having a good inspector and someone that's on your speed dial that you trust. And we work with Advantage. We also work with Valley. Valley Building Inspection. I love Curtis from Advantage. Everybody at Advantage is awesome. So definitely, you know, have a good one in your pocket because they are definitely, I mean, it can make or break a deal. Okay. All right. So insurability, your CLUE report, right? That's the comprehensive loss underwriting exchange report that comes from the listing agent, but you need to make sure your buyer sees it. Communicating, right? Again, same thing on this is communicating all the way through the process with all the parties involved. Review the inspection report with the client and do your repair requests. Again, cost and convenience, and what are the big ticket items, okay? And negotiating that. All right, presenting, my slides are not right, I'm sorry. So page 21, so closing prep. So scheduling the closing, again, title usually helps you with that, but you need to make sure that it gets done. Communicating all the way through the whole process, making sure the appraisal gets done. Appraisals have been an issue lately because of the market is the way that it is and everybody's super busy. So a lot of times agents will wait until the inspection is done to order the appraisal because they don't want their buyer coming out of pocket with that if the deal falls through in the inspection. I think you got to be real careful with that right now because appraisers are behind. They're busy and they're behind. And so that one of our agents, that cost him a deal because they did that and the appraisal was late. The seller had a backup offer for significantly more money than the offer that they were negotiating. And the appraisal was late and they refused them an extension because they wanted to take the backup offer. So it cost them the deal. And so be real careful with that these days. Have a conversation with your lender and find out what the typical turn times are right now for appraisals because you may not have that option. You know, the buyer may need to pull the trigger and order the appraisal right away. Okay. So just be careful with that. Again, review the title policy, review the closing statement. If you've negotiated any kind of concessions, you want to make sure they're right. And again, attending the closing, super important thing. Lastly, the post-closing activities. So it's not in here, but I used to show up on moving day. And I showed up on moving day with food because that's the one thing people tend to forget to do is eat on moving day. And so I'd show up with either a pizza or cold sandwiches and food, and people love that, right? Because, you know, and you could do that for seller or buyer, right? But because I was a buyer's agent on Nate's team, that's what I typically work with was buyers. And so showing up with food on moving day, right? And again, solicit for feedback, send out a survey. You can do, if you represent the buyer, you could door knock, you could do the 10-10-20 and let them know, hey, I just sold this house and your new neighbor is Jim and Julie, right? You can let them know that. So, and that's demonstrating that hustle, right? And again, you know, phone calls, same thing as with the just listed. If you're making phone calls, make sure you're not calling people that don't want to be solicited. And lastly, on here is just kind of your page 22 is just a pie chart of the summary. So we have our potential, right? And remember, we want to live up to 100% of our potential. We want to maximize that output and then be effective and efficient, be intentional and proactive. And then that results in the activities management, right? And all these things that we've just gone over that are vital activities and money-making activities, which is the most important part, right? Is being money-making activities. So with that being said, what did Debbie say here? She had to scoot, had an appointment. Okay, awesome. All right, guys. Any other thoughts or comments before we wrap up for today?
I'm good. This was awesome.
Cool, good. You guys were quiet today. I see you taking notes though. Very good. Tomorrow we have a Bouge class, right? Tomorrow's Wednesday. We have a Bouge class with Alex. That will be the last Bouge class for this year. And then Thursday is the mastermind with Nate and I. Like I said, even if you're not participating in the 120 day, I would still encourage you to come because there'll be great idea exchange and just good content. So, and other than that, that's all I got for you guys today.
Awesome. Thank you.
You guys stay safe. You're very welcome.
Thanks, Sarah.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.